Cabinet met yesterday, December 2nd, 2014, and coming out of that cabinet meeting, the head of the Presidential Secretariat and Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Roger Luncheon, will bring you highlights on a number of matters Cabinet wished to bring to the public's attention through you, the media, after which we will entertain questions on his opening statement. And I rather suspect we have some time to play around with today, and we will therefore entertain other questions outside of those on his opening presentation. I'll hand you over to Dr. Roger Luncheon.
Thank you, Kwame. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Cabinet met on the 2nd of December, first meeting in the month of December, and arising from that meeting, these are the matters I will be bringing to your attention. As usual, contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections to the awards, talks, other options, and then we have snippets dealing with the CXC high-performing students, high performers, and diplomatic roundup. Allow me, as usual, to begin with the contracts for which Cabinet granted its no objections for the awards. I will start with Public Works, and specifically Sea and River Defense. And this contract, at a value of 182.35 million Ghana dollars, 182.35 million Ghana dollars, the contract was for the construction of 350 meters of rip-rap river defenses. Rip-rap river defenses, and that would be at La Retraite on the on the west bank of Demerara in Region 3. So, contract 182.3 million Ghana dollars for the construction of rip-rap river defenses at La Retraite on the west bank. The second is security, and this one is the completion of the Coast Guard training school. The completion of the Coast Guard training school, that facility out there at the mouth of the Demerara River on the east bank, and this is $19.9 million to complete the construction of the Coast Guard training school. Health. The renovation of Block A, Richmond Hill, Linden. This is the doctor's quarters. I assume that the homes there are being converted for the use of the doctors, and that costs 19.3 million Ghana dollars. 19.3 million Ghana dollars, and that's renovating those houses for the use of the doctors in Richmond Hill. Agriculture. It's the construction of the storage bond at Monroe. This is on the East Coast and Region 4 at a cost of 42.4 million Ghana dollars. Construction of a storage bond. This is precisely for the pesticide unit, 42.4 million Guyana dollars. We continue, and this one here is the Ministry of Culture, Youth, and Sports. And sport is the construction of the synthetic track and field facility. And here, the specific facility is phase 3, the installation of water distribution lines and system. Phase 3, distribution lines and systems, water distribution. And that is at a cost of 16.6 million Guyana dollars. And lastly, this is housing and water, and it's the upgrade of the roads at Bell West, and this is on the west bank of Demerara in Region 3, lots 1 and 2, two lots, aggregately 265.9 million Guyana dollars. 265.9 million Guyana dollars. This is at the not so new housing scheme established there on the back of canal, the Bell West. Those, colleagues, are the contracts to which Cabinet granted its no objections to the awards. Talks, other options. There can be little doubt that general and regional elections are gaining currency as a reasonable, acceptable alternative, an option to talks among the parliamentary political parties. There can be no doubt that general and regional elections are gaining currency as a reasonable and acceptable alternative, an option to talks among the parliamentary political parties. In that context, President Ramatar has minimally 3 questions that have always consumed his and his advisors' attention in the context of a failed prorogation. Failed in the sense of meeting the objectives that drove the selection of the prorogation alternative on November the 10th, 2014. Those 3 questions essentially address, 1, the prorogation itself, on the assumption, on the acceptance that it has failed to deliver the goods, then the question would be, its continuation cannot be justified, and therefore, when will it end? The second question returns us to the options that were there on November the 10th, among which was prorogation, but today on December the 4th, no? December the 3rd, we have to scratch out prorogation from the remaining alternatives and options. And the question would be the consideration. What would be the next option? And as I said in my opening sentence, the currency that elections and the currency that specifically general and regional elections, not local government, the currency that general and regional elections is gaining essentially points towards one alternative being, for want of a better term, superior to the others. These considerations came to the fore as the President contemplated the response of retired Brigadier Granger at December the 2nd, December the 2nd piece of letter writing, a response to the November the 18th invitation to the leader of the opposition to talks. Succinctly, the Brigadier's response has provided adequate clarity. And apart from being disappointed, which was communicated to Mr. Granger by the President, apart from being disappointed, I think the consideration now is to examine those options, particularly general and regional elections. In that context, this examination is not intended, cannot be endless, and what the President has decided, he would be on the Saturday coming, that would be the 7th of December, hosting, the 6th of December, he would be hosting an encounter with the media at State House. The proposal was 1 p.m., but he would be hosting an encounter with the media, and the intention is to acquaint Guyanese with the current thinking. This is the post-decision that the leader of the opposition letter produced. And that decision, as I said, essentially said prorogation and its objectives were essentially lost. There was essentially no value in prolonging the prorogation. This was the time to look at alternatives. And as I said, gaining currency, among those alternatives, gaining currency was general and regional elections. High performers, CSEC. The Caribbean Examination Council, CXC, will be holding this would be the regional top awards ceremony. This would be on the 4th, that's tomorrow. On the 4th of December, this is at Mona Campus in Jamaica, where top performers in the region would again be honored for their performances at the 2014 May-June CSEC examinations. You would recall that those results announced by the Ministry of Education revealed that Guyana has remained a consistent high top performer, and this year has grabbed 4 of the 8 awards. 4 of the 8 awards. We've had Miss Elisa Hamilton grabbing the award as the top performer overall. Then Miss Aliyah Abdul Qadir, and she has grabbed the award as the most outstanding performer in the field of humanities. And then we have Ryan Chand, and he has grabbed the award as the best performer, top performer in business studies. And lastly, Kishan Kuchilu, who has grabbed the award as the top student, performer, in technical vocational studies. Our 4 Guyanese who have done us honor would be joining with the others at the Momono campus ceremony tomorrow, and Cabinet extended its congratulations again to these performers who have brought recognition and engendered pride in our educational system, in our students and their performances, and at the same time recognize the level of consistency year after year, grabbing the majority of prizes that are awarded by CSEC for top performers. Lastly, diplomatic roundup, and the cabinet at that meeting on December the 2nd, Tuesday, December the 2nd, granted its agreement to the appointment of the ambassador, the non-resident ambassador, and the extraordinaire, and plenipotentiary, and this is from the Republic of Peru to the Republic of Guyana. The ambassador, Mario Lopez would be non-resident and would be resident in Caracas, Venezuela. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention. As was disclosed earlier, we do have time, and under those circumstances, the floor is indeed open, not only to questions on my opening statement, or on any other topical matter that you think the HPS, the Cabinet Secretary, might feel. Thank you.
Luncheon, Vanessa Narang again. Chronicle, one area of clarity on your last, on the statement regarding talks. Did the President respond after Mr. Granger acknowledged his letter?
Yes, he expressed, as I said, his disappointment.
That was basically the content of his response, or?
That was essentially what he said. I'm disappointed.
Okay, also a question on the same statement. Can we look for a timeline? You said that there's no value in prolonging the prorogation, so how soon can we expect an announcement?
Well, I did say the President would be speaking, and those questions probably would be best addressed because he is the authority to make such pronouncements. So I would urge you to perhaps wait a while until the Saturday planned encounter at State House.
So I take it that you also leave any answers to whether the prorogation will end to the President, to ask the President.
Yes, I am unwilling to speculate, and I suspect that, like everything else in life, there may very well not be unanimity on particular post-prorogation matters. And the buck stops with the President, as I'm certain you would observe, you would accept.
You Mark's counting on yourself, but could you speculate further?
There's been no speculation so far, Neil. Yes.
Is the President, sir, going to say something definitive, or is he just going to say that he's thinking of, like you've said about
As I said, I would hesitate to engage in speculation. I, just like yourself and others, have my own personal opinions, and I am aware that there are other opinions out there. There are stakeholders who would need to make contributions, and the President is the one who ultimately calls the shots and makes the decision. So there's no need to speculate. I think how many hours? Today is Wednesday, 2 days, Thursday, Friday. 2 and a piece.
Dr. Luncheon, follow up to Neil's question. Given that you said stakeholders are important, has the President engaged with anybody else or spoken to any stakeholder groups since Mr. Granger's response?
Well, I would assume he has. I don't believe if he said I will speak to the press on Saturday that he's going to start doing that on Saturday.
Can you say which groups? Or those private
No, I
sector?
wouldn't know that. But to me, it seems in Congress not to initiate the process of getting a clearer understanding how others feel. I mean, the options are not many, as I spoke to you about elections as the currency, but certainly there are stakeholders whose views ought to be solicited and considered in decision making.
Dr. Roger, I'm coming off the statements. One, for the statement, when was the letter dispatched? The letter of disappointment dispatched to Mr. Greener? And two, deals with your neighbors up the road, the GPSU. Yesterday they had a fiery press conference, but I know it's more fluff than anything. But we had Patrick Garrett calling for 48 hours for government to acquiesce to, was it, they're 8% across the board for public servants, and negotiations to begin within 48 hours. They would have also said that this is 13 years since government has he keeps breaking promises that, sorry, about the collective bargaining. Your response to these claims?
Well, I'm certain that after 13 years, we couldn't conceivably find 13 explanations. So I think we need to go back to what has fundamentally been observed over this period of which Mr. Yard spoke. But let me say first that in the context of the collective labor agreement and the point that he is making to return to negotiations, I have the greatest difficulty in not seeing this as core, as routine, as an expected rejoinder of an experienced trade unionist in the context of what has happened. So I wouldn't break a lance with Mr. Yard on his insistence that, look, we have a CLA, and on its agreement, its provisions, we're supposed to negotiate this wages and salary increases, among other things. So I would give him kudos, I would give him credit for actually putting it frankly on the table. Look, we need to go back to negotiations. I think where the breakdown has been occurring over the years is that the negotiations have failed to produce a response, particularly one that enjoys the support of both sides. This is the union and the government, and also, and I think this is one of the more important yet recurrent aspects, timing. By the time the alternative to a breakdown is concluded, I don't know about you, but I won't get my 5% before Christmas. And I hesitate to believe that we're so mercenary, but you know, a Christmas without the 5%, bro, I wouldn't like to be the one who faces the public and our employees and say, we're locked with Mr. Yard in working on the alternative to negotiations, and therefore we have to cancel this aspect of Christmas. No salary increase retroactive to 12 months ago. I say that without trying to be facetious, because that is essentially what has happened, and has happened other than perhaps when the century, around about 97, 98, 99, when we did have a arbitration process and an award, but we must examine the time that it took. And if it were to start, let us say now, when we declare that there's a breakdown, the likelihood of having salary increases for 2014 paid or arbitrated and an award made and paid in 2015 put impact on my Christmas. I don't know about yours.
But not specifically how government responds to this 48-hour
Ultimatum.
Well, I'm pretty certain that the Minister of the Public Service would continue the engagement with the union. There are two unions active in the public service, the labor union and the public service union, and I think the minister would continue their engagements, that is with the two unions, and I believe in a genuine way, try to examine what are the options to what has happened now. This would probably be the 14th year when the opportunity to be provided for Mr. Yard to make the same claims and make the same observations next year. So the objective, I suspect, and I was speculating on one of the programs that at which I participated, that the earlier the alternative to negotiating a joint agreement, the earlier that starts, the likelihood is enhanced that before Christmas it would be achieved. Of course, I was reminded that in many other places, the salary increase is granted at the beginning of the year and not at the end of the year. So a retroactive payment is unnecessary if a salary increase were to have been provided in January. I was reminded of that, but I have to research to find out how it ended up in December.
Dorian.
Dr. Luncheon, there are those there on the same issue. From the GPSU statement yesterday, it seems as though the government has 24 hours to respond for negotiations, or else there will be further action. This is according to the GPSU president. Is the government at all concerned about this further action that is being taken by the GPSU?
But I don't think it would be necessary. I cannot believe that a union that is in a collective bargaining agreement with an employer who insists that we negotiate could conceivably be told, hell no, we are negotiating. So I can't see the or else being of significance. The likelihood, as I said, is for the public service ministry representative, maybe the minister, permanent secretary, to meet with the union and continue these negotiations that have indeed been going on. But I insist again, have year after year failed to deliver the goods. So I don't believe the either or is of value. It's shown in there, but you know, I said the invitation is reasonable. It's par for the course. I can't imagine a experienced trade unionist not seeing as a fundamental of organized labor the role, the contribution of negotiations. And as an employer, I can't imagine the government, or particularly its agent, PSM, to be saying, hell no, we are negotiating.
But Dr. Luncheon, can you say definitively whether there were any negotiations between the two entities?
Oh yes, no.
And what came up in those negotiations?
Well, I said, no, first, negotiations have never ended. There's been going on. What has happened is that it has been, I would characterize this as an unavailing process. We ain't getting anywhere close to an agreement that both sides enjoy, both sides could support. So that is what has caused negotiations to sort of exist in limbo. This is what caused negotiations to exist in limbo. And I'm saying that the alternatives that have been resorted to have a lot to do with consequences, timing, that indeed were we to follow faithfully the script in the context of failed negotiations when the agreement cannot be reached, then I did say you would have a Christmas without your 5%.
Dr. Luncheon, just to make it clear, HPR was stating yesterday that since in June, he was sending over letters to the permanent secretary, and then he sent a subsequent letter, and to date he has not met with him because he said that the response was that he's still awaiting direction as to whether they should sit and talk. So what he's saying, there's been no discussion for the whole year as it relates to public service. And what I'm trying to find out is what would have happened at cabinet level in relation to the increases for public service? Because on more than one occasion, the president stated this year that there will be no imposition, that we will sit down and talk and whatnot. Now, given what the president has said and given what the GPSU president has said, I want to know where was the breakdown, what happened at cabinet level?
Well, I go back to what I said. At the end of the day, a successful negotiation is achieved when the outcome is embraced, it is acceptable to both sides. The course of the negotiations in 2014 has been somewhat similar to the course in prior years, where the, call it gap, the differences are considerable. I don't know if you are aware of what are some of the, let's not use the word demands, although some have used that term, but some of the requests that the union has put on the table and said, this is what we are seeking for wages and salary increases and others allowances for 2014. The government is offering 5%. The government has budgeted in the appropriate vote sums that could not exceed single digit. I believe the most modest demand of the union is double digit, and not modest double digit either. So it's a recipe for deadlock. It's a recipe for gridlock. And this is why the agreement has a mechanism to resolve such. And so you frequently would hear terms that involve mediation, conciliation, and negotiation, the arbitration. I'm just pointing out to you that at the point at which a decision had to be made, 9,000 odd public officers, another 11,000 that fall within the salaries and the financial administration by the Ministry of Finance, 20,000 workers. I don't believe it is one of those press a button sort of interventions that would allow any one of us to be paid salaries for December, wages and salary increases back to January before Christmas. And it has always obsessed the administration to ensure that whatever is the state of its relationship and the discourses and the negotiations with the union, it will not be used to inconvenience and disadvantage its workers. They're members of the union, but to us, even more important, they are employees of the government.
Is it on the same question? Okay, well, you go ahead.
Dr. Luncheon and Julius News. Sir, would you care to consider or comment on if your government, the PPP government, has made any consideration in how to deal with minority governments
hasn't. I can say that in terms of a dedicated approach, a task that has been assumed that warrants attention, formal attention, urgent attention, I would say no. The contentions remain the same, that minority governments indeed prevail all over the world, and indeed there may very well be some attitudinal changes that are needed. There may be attitudinal changes that are needed. In essence, acceptance that legislature is not the executive. Things like that. And it does not necessarily involve a resort to constitutional amendments to maybe enshrine some tenet of minority government. I don't believe that that has been sold to the governing party.